Can we start before the time?
It depends on which time you're on. That clock says 5:59, but there's nobody in the audience but us, so I'm starting. Welcome, everybody, to the City of Palatka Community Development Agency meeting on August 19th, 2026 at 6 p.m. I'm calling the meeting to order, beginning with the invocation led by Pastor Mulberry and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Alexander. Please stand if you're able.
Father, again, we say thank you for all that you've done and all that you're doing. We pray, God, that you will bless our coming together this evening as we continue to further the business of this city. Pray for the wisdom, God, that is necessary upon these constituents, Lord, that we may further the purpose for this city. We thank you for all that you're doing and certainly all that you've done. Father, we give you glory and we give you praise because you brought us together once again. We thank you. Now, God bless us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Davis? Present. Commissioner Campbell?
Present.
Commissioner Borum?
Present.
Commissioner Jones? Commissioner Alexander?
Present.
Mr. Deputy?
Present.
Mayor Carrera?
Present. We have quorum. I am going to open the floor up to public comments. Is anybody here for public comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. And before we start, perhaps because there are a couple of newer folks here, some introductions might be in order.
Yes,
Please,
thank you,
Ms.
Madam
Curry.
Mayor. Good afternoon to all of the members. I would like to introduce Lucia Hodges. She is with Smith, Gambrell, and Russell, and she is our lead attorney in this transition period. Her effective date was August 6th, and she has met with just about all of the directors, to include, of course, Nicole, who is our CRA coordinator, and so she is pretty much up to speed, I would say. But, and also I'd like to introduce Jennifer Thompson. Jennifer is our acting finance director. She's been in the finance department for several years as the finance services supervisor, so she is also pretty well versed in the CRA financial affairs. And so those are the new players for the city.
Thank you. On to regular business, CRA Board Member Orientation.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Through previous CRA Board discussions, the need was identified by the Board for a more formal onboarding and orientation resource for CRA Board members. The orientation consolidates key information regarding the purpose, authority, guidance, and financial operation of the CRA. And with that, we'll move into the presentation. Rather than diving into detail, every detail of Chapter 163, the goal is to build a common understanding of why Community Redevelopment Agency exists, how they operate, and how they're funded, and how the CRA Board makes redevelopment decisions. And throughout this presentation, we'll focus on 4 key concepts that should guide nearly every discussion and comes before this board. And those are purpose, authority, governance, financial stewardship. And by the end of today's presentation, my hope is that you'll have a solid understanding of the CRA's role and a framework for evaluating future redevelopment projects.
Hold on, Nicole, I'm sorry. We're having technical difficulties here. There we go.
While they're getting that together, We'll
Yep.
begin with a question that often causes confusion, even among people who have worked within CRAs for years. And that's, what exactly does the term CRA mean? And one of the most common sources of confusion is the acronym, and it's used in many different ways. So first, Community Redevelopment Agency is the governmental entity created under Chapter 163, Part 3, to implement redevelopment fund. And second, the Community Redevelopment Area refers to the legally designated geographic area where funds redevelopment within those designated areas. And here in Palatka, we commonly refer to our redevelopment area as districts, TIF districts, and those are our Central Business TIF District, our North Historic TIF District, our South Historic TIF District. And while there are 3 development areas, there is still only one Community Redevelopment Agency, and that administers for all 3. As CRA board members, your responsibilities extend across all 3 of those districts. And now that we've identified the terminology, let's look at why Florida created a community redevelopment agencies in the first place. So in Module 1, the first section explains the purpose of community redevelopment and the conditions that led to the creation of a CRA. Community redevelopment, you can go back one.
Sorry.
You're good. Community redevelopment begins with recognizing that certain areas experience persistent conditions that hinder investment and economic vitality. Chapter 163, Part 3 allows local governments to establish community redevelopment areas when documented conditions exist, such as slum and blight, deteriorating structures, inadequate infrastructure, insufficient roadways, public safety concerns, shortages of affordable housing, or lagging economic conditions. These aren't simply isolated issues, they are conditions that, when taken together, can discourage private investment and make it difficult for an area to thrive. In Palatka, these conditions were documented through a finding of necessity study in 1983, which ultimately led to the creation of our Community Redevelopment Agency. So what happens if those conditions are left unaddressed? Well, that's when we move into the cycle of decline. This slide illustrates what we often refer to as a cycle of decline. Physical deterioration can discourage private investment, and businesses may relocate or choose not to invest. As investment declines, property values can stagnate or decrease, which affects the local tax base and often contributes to further deterioration. Without intervention, this cycle can continue for years or even decades. The purpose of community redevelopment is to interrupt that cycle and create conditions that encourage reinvestment. Rather than allowing deterioration to continue, the CRA strategically invests in projects and programs that encourage property owners, businesses, developers, and residents to reinvest in the community. So what does redevelopment actually accomplish? Redevelopment is fundamentally an investment strategy. The objective isn't simply to build projects, it's It's to create conditions that encourage additional private investment. That might include improving infrastructure, preserving historic resources, supporting businesses development, enhancing public spaces, or improving neighborhood conditions. Ultimately, successful redevelopment strengthens the local economy, improves quality of life, and contributes to a healthier tax base that benefits the community over long term. You can go to the next slide. Because every community is different, redevelopment can take many forms. One of the questions new board members often ask is, what kind of projects does a CRA actually fund? The answer is that redevelopment can take many forms. It may involve historic preservation, infrastructure improvement, housing initiatives, economic development, placemaking, or improvements to public spaces. The important thing to remember is that the type of project alone does not determine whether it is appropriate for CRA funding. Instead, every project should further a redevelopment purpose and support the adopted redevelopment plan. And just as important as understanding what a CRA can do is understanding what it is not intended to do. Next slide. One of the biggest misconceptions about community redevelopment agencies is that they can fund any project located within the redevelopment area, and that's not the case. CRA funds are not intended to replace general government funding or support routine municipal operations. The examples shown here, such as police stations, fire stations, general government administration, and routine municipal services, are examples of expenditures that generally do not qualify because they do not further community redevelopment. And that's true even if you're, let's say, we can use City Hall, for example. This is a historic building. Historic preservation falls within the purview of the CRA. However, it does house government offices, so that would eliminate it from being used for CRA development. Likewise, a project isn't automatically eligible simply because it's located within a CRA district. The key question should always be, does this expenditure further redevelopment, and is it consistent with the adopted redevelopment plan? That's the redevelopment lens we'll continue to use throughout this presentation. Go to the next slide. Now that we've established why community redevelopment agencies exist, let's turn the legal framework that governs everything CRA does. We'll look at where the CRA derives its authority, how redevelopment areas are created, and the distinct role that the CRA board and the city commission. And then module 2, now that we've discussed why community redevelopment agencies exist, let's talk about the legal framework that govern everything that a CRA does. One of the biggest differences between serving on the city commission and serving on the CRA board is that the CRA's authority is defined by Chapter 163, Part 3, Florida statutes, and adopted redevelopment plan. So those are the two frameworks that we operate within. As board members, you'll see a variety of projects and funding requests come before you, and this section provides the framework for evaluating those requests and understanding the limits of CRA authority. Every CRA decision should begin with 2 documents: our redevelopment plan provides the direction. If there is one slide from today's presentation that I hope you'll remember, it's this one. Every significant CRA decision should begin with 2 questions. First, does Chapter 163, Part 3 provide the authority for the CRA to undertake this activity? And second, is the proposed project or program consistent with the adopted redevelopment plan? Think of these as the 2 CRA guideposts. Chapter 163 establishes what the CRA is legally authorized to do, and the redevelopment plan provides the local vision and priorities of how redevelopment should occur within Palaca. When staff brings a recommendation before the board, our responsibility is to demonstrate both statutory authority and the connection to the redevelopment plan. Likewise, as board members, those are appropriate questions to ask whenever you're evaluating a project. So how does a community redevelopment agency actually come into existence? Next slide. This slide illustrates the statutory process established in Chapter 163, Part 3. Everything begins with the finding of necessity. This study documents the conditions that justify community redevelopment and identifies the boundaries of the proposed redevelopment area. Once those findings are adopted, the community redevelopment area is established. The local government then creates the Community Redevelopment Agency to administer the redevelopment within the area. Next, the agency prepares and adopts the redevelopment plan that establishes the vision, goals, and redevelopment strategies. And finally, a redevelopment trust fund is established to receive tax increment revenues, allowing the CRA to implement redevelopment projects and activities identified within the plan. Each of the steps build upon the previous one, creating the legal and financial framework that allows the CRA to operate. And although the CRA is created by the city, it does not function as another city department. Next Next slide. The CRA is a separate legal entity. This is one of the most important governance concepts for every board member to understand. Although the same individuals may serve as both a city commissioner and the CRA board, you are acting in two different legal capacities. When sitting as the city commission, you exercise the city's general municipal authority. When sitting as the CRA board, you exercise redevelopment authority granted under Chapter 163, Part 3. Those authorities often overlap, but they are not the same. The CRA is a legally separate governmental entity with its own purpose, budget, trust fund, and statutory responsibilities. Understanding that distinction helps explain why some projects require both action by both the CRA board and the city commission. So what exactly can the CRA do, and just how importantly, what, and more importantly, what can it not do? Chapter 163, Part 3 grants the CRA specific redevelopment authority. The CRA may implement the redevelopment plan, approve redevelopment projects, adopt its budget, authorize expenditures from the redevelopment trust fund, enter into redevelopment agreements, and encourage private investment. At the same time, there are important limitations. The CRA does not replace city government. It cannot operate outside of the redevelopment plan. CRA funds are not unrestricted public funds, nor should they automatically fund every project located within a redevelopment area. As we've discussed, location alone does not determine eligibility. The determining factor is whether the expenditure advances the redevelopment plan and is consistent with the adopted, advances the redevelopment and is consistent with the plan. This brings us to a question that frequently arises in Palatka. What happens when a project involves both the CRA and the city? This slide reflects a situation we'll encounter frequently in Palatka. Many redevelopment projects involve city-owned property, city infrastructure, or city contracts. That does not mean the CRA and the city are performing duplicate roles. Instead, each body is making decisions within its own legal authority. The CRA board determines whether a project serves a redevelopment purpose, whether it's consistent with the redevelopment plan, and whether CRA trust funds should be invested. The city commission, on the other hand, may need to approve procurement, contracts, construction activities, ownership matters, maintenance responsibilities, or other municipal obligations. A good example is our downtown streetscape project. The CRA determines whether the investment advances redevelopment, and the city oversees construction, procurement, and long-term ownership and maintenance. Those are separate decisions made by separate government entities, even when the same individuals are serving in both capacities. Now that we've established a legal framework and respective roles of the CRA and the city, let's turn our attention to the responsibilities of the CRA board members and what effective redevelopment government looks like. Sure.
On this, I understand clearly, but I think we have a problem here with the city overseeing contracts, and I do speak to the streetscape because we as merchants try to get answers, and nobody at City Hall can give us the answers that we're looking for. Even today, with the experience that I had with the contractor on St. John's Avenue, nobody could give me an answer at City Hall. I made 5 phone calls. I got 1 reply from City Hall. And it's very frustrating. And I think we need to work on this because if the city commission does the procurement and contract, then it should have some method to report back to us or to report back to the people. Now, I'm just speaking of the experience that I've had, and yet I know at one time we had 39 projects we need to star that as something we need to work on here in the city, if we can so note that.
Yes, sir, I am noting that. And just to understand better, it's when you're asking questions regarding the contract itself, is that,
Well, today, we had someone working during the day. 10 feet from my business, someone is lifting half-ton concrete. And nobody can speak to that, is my issue. So it's who's overseeing the contracts. You know, the CRA, we're the ones doing, I guess, the streetscape. But the city is responsible for day-to-day. But I'm not sure it's keeping up.
I made a note, and
And I thank you, and you were the one that did call me back. Thank you.
you're welcome.
If I might, Madam Mayor, because I called her and asked her to call you back.
Thank you.
And I also called Joe Verrecchio at Public Works and asked him to reach out as well. I don't know if he did. I've been in meetings all day, but I did make sure that I connected with Nicole and asked her to get back with you immediately. And then I checked back with her later in the day to see if you had been, properly addressed.
And I appreciate that. You know, we had some safety features going on. You know, but thank you.
And it is Nicole and of course Ms. Curry, and that's, we've got to, they are working on, I believe they are working on refining this process and making sure we do get things done. But sometimes things pop up like that, and I understand the frustration.
Oh, yeah,
Go ahead.
absolutely.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. During my training for CRA or whatever, when I started out back in 2015, I learned that when commissioners are on CRA boards, you're not referenced by a commissioner or what have you, board members in that regard. So just from a standpoint of kind of clear communication, we're not supposed to be referencing commissioners.
It's a different role.
Yep.
No, I'm taking notes, because I was not aware of that. So just for my information, no, I appreciate that. That's helpful. Right. So next is Module 3, Governance and Board Responsibilities. Now that we've discussed the legal framework established by Chapter 163, let's focus on what that means for you as CRA board members. Governance is more than approving projects or budgets. It's about providing oversight, exercising judgment, and ensuring that every action taken by the CRA advances the redevelopment mission. As board members, you're stewards of public trusts and public resources. Every decision should reflect both the intent of Chapter 163 and the priorities established by the redevelopment plan. So what exactly are the board's responsibilities? No, you're good right there. Okay. Serving on the CRA board is both a governance role and a stewardship role. And while many of the same individuals also serve as city commission, when you're acting as a CRA board, your focus is specifically on advancing community redevelopment. Your responsibilities fall into 3 primary areas. First is policy. The board establishes redevelopment priorities, adopts policies and programs, provides overall direction for implementing the redevelopment plan. Your role is to determine what the CRA should accomplish and ensure that its activities remain consistent with the community redevelopment's vision. And second is financial stewardship. The CRA board is responsible for adopting the annual budget, authorizing expenditures from the redevelopment trust fund, and ensuring that tax increment financing revenues are used responsibly and with accordance of Chapter 163 and the adopted redevelopment plan. These are restricted public funds, and one of your most important responsibilities is ensuring that they are invested wisely to achieve long-term redevelopment goals. You can go to the next.
Can we also say with that, that all the funds must have line items that are matching of the plan?
The plan.
The intent of the plan, and we can't not allocate funds to specific parts of the plan or things that we feel are needed to work on in the CRA. And there also can't be a reserve in the CRA. And we risk losing the funds if we don't
Yes.
use them appropriately and in a timely fashion.
Finally, oversight. The board monitors the CRA's progress by reviewing redevelopment initiatives, evaluating program effectiveness, measuring progress toward redevelopment goals, and ensuring accountability and transparency in the agency's operations. Taken together, these responsibilities reflect the board's role as the governing body of the CRA. You establish the direction, provide financial oversight, and ensure the agency remains focused on its statutory redevelopment mission. And while the board provides the vision and direction, it relies on staff to research opportunities, develop recommendations, and implement the board's decisions. Okay, let's look at the partnership. An effective CRA board depends on a strong partnership between the board and the staff. Staff is responsible for researching at projects, evaluating redevelopment opportunities, preparing recommendations, managing programs, implementing the direction and ensuring compliance with applicable laws and policy. The board's role is different. You evaluate those recommendations, ask questions, consider alternatives, and ultimately make policy decisions that guide redevelopment within the community redevelopment areas. Neither role is more important than the other, they're just simply different. When each fulfills its responsibilities, the CRA can operate effectively, transparently, and in accordance with Chapter 163, Part 3. And one of the primary tools the board uses to guide redevelopment is the redevelopment plan. We've mentioned the plan several times already, and it is truly the foundation of how a CRA works. Think of the redevelopment plan as the community's roadmap to redevelopment. It identifies long-term goals, it establishes the priorities, recommends projects and programs, and provides the framework for future investment. Perhaps most importantly, it helps ensure consistency. While board members may change over time, the redevelopment plan provides continuity by keeping redevelopment decisions focused on the community's long-term vision rather than individual preferences. It's also important to remember that the redevelopment plan is a living document. As communities need to evolve, the plan may be amended to reflect new priorities while remaining consistent with Chapter 163, Part 3. Here in Palaca, we're currently updating our plan to ensure it continues to guide redevelopment efforts for years to come. So how should board members apply all of this when evaluating a project? This is one of my favorite slides because it shifts our thinking from activity to impact. As a board, success isn't measured simply by how much money we spend, but more so how many projects we complete. The better questions are the ones shown here. Did we encourage additional private investment? Did we improve property conditions? Did we preserve historic resources? Did we strengthen neighborhoods? Did we move closer to the goals established in the redevelopment plan? Those are the measures that tell us whether redevelopment is actually working. In other words, the CRA success should be measured by redevelopment outcomes, not by the amount of money spent. So Module 4 is the financial operations and TIF. And so far we've discussed the Community Redevelopment Agency exists, the legal framework established by Chapter 163 and board members. Now let's turn to one of the most important responsibilities of the CRA board, and that's the financial stewardship. One of the questions I hear most often is, where does the CRA money come from? The answer is tax increment funding, or as we call it, TIF. Understanding how TIF works is important because it helps explain not only where the funding comes from, but also why those funds are legally restricted and why every expenditure must support redevelopment. The goal of this section isn't to turn anyone into an accountant. Instead, it's to provide a practical understanding of how redevelopment is funded and the board's responsibility for managing those resources. So let's begin with the basic concept of tax increment financing. Next slide. This is an example, this example actually uses fiscal year 2026 Central Business TIF district budget data, but it's intentionally simplified just for illustration concept. When the downtown redevelopment area was established, the taxable property value or base value was approximately $14.8 million. Today, that taxable value has grown to approximately $75.8 million. That increase is taxable value, about $61.1 million is the tax increment. The City of Putnam County each apply their adopted millage rates to that increment to determine their respective tax increment contributions. Those contributions are then deposited into the CRA Redevelopment Trust Fund. For this example, the fiscal year 26 budget includes approximately $323,000 from the city and $477,000 from the county, providing a total of $800,000 for redevelopment activities. Again, the important takeaway isn't the calculation, but rather it's the relationship. As redevelopment encourages investment and taxable property value grows, additional resources become available to continue investing in the redevelopment within that district. So now we can move to where the money comes from. From where the money comes from, let's talk about how those funds are managed. The Redevelopment Trust Fund is where tax increment revenues are deposited and managed. One of the most important things to understand is that these are restricted funds. Unlike the city's general fund, the Redevelopment Trust Fund may only be used within the community redevelopment area that generated the revenue, and only for redevelopment purposes that are consistent with the adopted revenue plan. As board members, your responsibility isn't simply deciding how to spend the available money, it's also determining whether an investment advances redevelopment and complies with both Chapter 163 and the redevelopment plan. That distinction is what makes CRA financial stewardship unique. And so what types of investments are appropriate? Community redevelopment can take many forms. It provides flexibility in how redevelopment goals are achieved. Eligible investment might include infrastructure improvements, historic preservation, housing and neighborhood stabilization, redevelopment planning, property acquisition, economic redevelopment initiatives, placemaking, and development of incentive programs. Although these investments may look very different, they're all connected by a common principle. Each should address a redevelopment need and support the goals identified in the adopted redevelopment plan. The type of project doesn't determine eligibility. The redevelopment plan does. And understanding what CRA funds can support also means understanding what they cannot support.
I don't know who's controlling that, but it's not me.
Go to the next slide.
Go ahead.
Okay. This slide reinforces one of the most important concepts we've discussed today. CRA funds are not a substitute for city's general fund. They are not unrestricted city revenue. They're not available for routine municipal operations, and they're not automatically available because a project happens to be located within the CRA. Location alone does not determine eligibility. Every proposed expenditure should have a clear redevelopment purpose and be consistent with the adopted redevelopment plan. That's the standard the board should continue to apply when evaluating future funding requests. And let's briefly look at how these funds are planned and managed through the
Madam
budget.
Mayor, just 1 second, please. Thank you. If I might. Are we being recorded or not?
It's recording something, but I don't know if it's actually on YouTube.
Excuse me?
It's recording what we're talking, but I have no idea why it stopped all of a sudden.
But it's okay now? Clarification, it's functioning now appropriately?
Okay, fine. Yes, we are live streaming. We're definitely recording. I just don't know why it said it will stop.
Okay, but we're all set now.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Off.
So we're on budgeting CRA funds. The annual CRA budget is more than a financial document. It's one of the primary ways the redevelopment plan is implemented. Each year, the board evaluates redevelopment priorities, anticipated revenues, ongoing commitments, and future projects to determine how best to invest resources. Some redevelopment projects can be completed within a single fiscal year, but others, such as major infrastructure improvements or grant-funded projects, may require several years of planning and implementation, such as the streetscape project. The budget allows the CRA to align financial resources with long-term redevelopment priorities, and that brings us to a question that is often asked at the end of each fiscal year. What happens to unspent CRA funds? A common misconception is that any unspent CRA funds automatically carry over indefinitely or become unrestricted at the end of the fiscal year. Chapter 163, Part 3 provides specific direction for how remaining trust fund dollars may be handled. Depending on the circumstances, those funds may be returned to the contributing taxing authority, used to reduce eligible indebtedness, placed in escrow for certain indebtedness, or appropriated for a specific multi-year redevelopment project subject to statutory requirements. So the key takeaway for the board is that good financial stewardship isn't measured by spending every available dollar. Sometimes the most responsible decision is to reserve funds for a planned redevelopment project that advances the goals of the redevelopment plan. Financial stewardship is about making strategic investments, not simply maximizing annual expenditures. At this point, we've covered why the CRA exists, the legal framework that it governs, your responsibilities as board members, and how redevelopment is funded. Let's conclude by looking specifically at the City of Palaca's CRA, its history, its redevelopment districts, and how these principles come together in practice here in Palaca. Throughout today's orientation, we focused on the framework, governance, stewardship, and community redevelopment agencies. Let's bring these concepts home by looking specifically at our city. This final section highlights our redevelopment history, the 3 TIF districts that make up the CRA today, and how the principles we've discussed are applied right here in our own community. And let's begin with the redevelopment areas that the CRA serves. The City of Palaca's Community Redevelopment Agency was established in 1983 to address documented blight conditions and encourage long-term reinvestment with designated areas of the community. Today, the CRA administers 3 community redevelopment areas, which we commonly refer to here as TIF districts. We have our Central Business TIF, North Historic TIF, and South Historic TIF. Although each district has its own unique characteristics and redevelopment priorities, they are all administered by one community redevelopment agency and governed by this board. Together, these districts represent the areas where redevelopment resources are strategically invested to encourage revitalization, preserve historic assets, improve infrastructure, and strengthen neighborhoods. The CRA we know today didn't happen overnight. It has evolved over more than 4 decades.
I have just a question of this.
Sure.
Ms. Nicole, it lists on here that the Central Business District has 424 residents on this map here, right there. So in each district, you list the residents. So in the Central, 424, I live in the Central and I own a business in the Central. Am I listed, where are the businesses? Are those residents that live in homes, that own homes?
Should say 424 properties?
Properties, I think is what it should say.
Okay.
Yeah. And
So-
this is really more to identify the area,
Okay.
the actual district.
Right, I'm just trying to get the feeling between home ownership and business ownership.
I got you. So this should be probably properties.
That property would be the most.
Right, okay, so,
Apt
okay, I
description.
just want to, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I can do it. This timeline illustrates that redevelopment is not a single project or initiative, it's an ongoing process. Beginning with the finding of necessity and the creation of the CRA in 1983, The agency has continued to evolve through updates to the redevelopment plan, governance improvements, interlocal agreements, and continued investment within the communities. Each milestone represents another step in refining the CRA's ability to respond to changing redevelopment needs while remaining grounded in Chapter 163, Part 3. Perhaps the most important takeaway from this timeline is that redevelopment is measured in decades, not months or even years. The work...
Excuse me, can we also say, because it's true that this is the last 30-year cycle that this city is, this CRA is eligible for. We're in our last 30-year cycle. We
Yes,
cannot apply
we're-
again, and I
we
think that,
sunset-
so it's crucial that we accomplish what we need to do via the plan for the
Yeah.
remaining time of this CRA's life.
Yes, ma'am. Our CRA is due to sunset in 2042. Perhaps one of the most important takeaways from this timeline is that, okay, redevelopment is measured in decades, not years. The work of today's board builds upon the efforts of those who served before us, just as future boards will build upon the decisions that you all and the community and the CRA makes today. So how do all of those pieces we've discussed actually work together? And I think this slide summarizes today's presentation. Everything begins with the redevelopment plan. The plan establishes the community's vision and identifies the redevelopment priorities. Tax increment financing provides the financial resources needed to pursue those priorities. The CRA board establishes policies, sets priorities, and determines how those resources should be invested. And staff then implements the board's direction by developing projects, administering programs, and carrying out the redevelopment initiatives. When all of those pieces work together effectively, redevelopment encourages additional private investment, creating the opportunity for continued revitalization throughout the community. That's really the purpose of the CRA. And so what does that redevelopment look like in Palaca today? These are examples of the types of redevelopment initiatives currently underway or being pursued within Palaca's CRA. You'll recognize many of these from recent board meetings, including the Downtown Streetscape Project, Building Improvement Grant Programs, Historic Preservation Initiatives, Wayfinding and Branding, Public Art, Residential Rehabilitation, as discussed, Parking and Mobility Improvements, Transportation Hub and Rail District proposed initiatives. And while these initiatives may appear very different from one another, they're all working toward the same goal, implementing the redevelopment plan and encouraging continued investment within our redevelopment districts. It's important to remember that redevelopment isn't accomplished through one project. It's achieved through a coordinated strategy made up of many complementary investments over time. And as we've discussed throughout this presentation, many of those projects also involve the city.
Go ahead, Commissioner. Mr. Boyd.
I'm waiting for it.
Well, that excellent presentation. But like doing some of the projects, I think it's important that when we're spending the dollars on the project, take a before and then after as it relates, and it kind of tells the story a little bit.
And I
So,
agree with that 100%. I started doing that for Streetscape because
Yeah.
at the end, I think it's important because there's so many pain points
Mm-hmm.
that's the only way people can truly appreciate
yes.
the process.
Right. And then, share that as well as, from a standpoint of sharing the dollars that went with that project to show how much has been invested in that particular project.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
I can't,
Board member.
board member. So, and that is absolutely required. As you mentioned earlier, it's important to show the impact, and that's how we know we're successful. So if we're not doing that, and not just the before and after pictures, but understanding the impact it's had, are we getting new businesses? Are we reaching the goal that we have in that plan? So thank you for closing the loop.
You're welcome. And if you'll bear with me just a few more, we're just about done with this presentation too. I know it was long and wordy, so I apologize.
No, we needed this.
You're doing an excellent job.
So CRA and city in practice. and this is important, because we have a lot of this, a lot of shared responsibilities and overlap. This final example brings together several concepts that we've discussed today. Many redevelopment projects require action by both the CRA Board and the City Commission. Using the streetscape, the board's role is to determine whether the project advances redevelopment, whether its purpose supports the plan, and whether TIF trust fund resources are invested. The City Commission, on the other hand, considers municipal responsibilities such as procurement, contracts, ownership, construction, and long-term maintenance. Those are different governmental decisions made under different legal authority. Understanding that distinction helps explain why some projects appear on both CRA and City Commission agendas. It's not duplication, it's each governing body carrying out its respective responsibilities. And so let's conclude by bringing everything together into the one decision-making framework. If there's one slide I'd encourage you to remember after today's orientation, it's this one. Nearly every decision that comes before the CRA Board can be viewed through these 4 questions. Purpose: does the proposal further redevelopment? Plan: is it supported by the adopted redevelopment plan? The funding: is the use of CRA trust funds appropriate and available? And authority: who should act, the CRA, the city, or both? Those 4 questions provide practical framework for evaluating projects and making sound redevelopment decisions. You'll find that they apply to almost every agenda item this board will need to consider. So what does all of that mean for you as board members? As we conclude this orientation, I'd leave you with these final thoughts. The Community Redevelopment Agency exists for one purpose: to accomplish redevelopment. Every policy you adopt, every project you approve, every budget you authorize, and every decision you make should ultimately support that mission. Serving the CRA Board is an opportunity to help shape the future of our community through thoughtful planning, responsible financial stewardship, and long-term investment. Thank you for your willingness to serve and for your commitment to the city of Palaca. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And as you begin serving, as you serve on this board, I encourage you to remember 4 words: purpose, plan, funding, and authority. And if you approach each agenda item through that lens, you'll be well equipped to fulfill all of the responsibilities and stewardships of the Community Redevelopment Agency.
Does anybody have any questions of Ms. Hall? Go ahead, Mr.
No,
Bowman.
just want to say she did a phenomenal job with this, I guess, educational piece as it relates to onboarding people who may have not known, and then even people who may have had the training before learn something new. So I learned a few additional things today. So thank you for that. Well put together.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Alexander?
Mr. Alexander. Ms. Arthur, thank you very much. You did a wonderful job. It was very informational, and I think it's going to benefit everyone that ever sits on this board. It definitely outlines what the purpose of the CRA is and how it's funded. And for those watching at home, I think that they will have a clearer understanding of how the CRA is supposed to function and what properties that it applies to. Thank you again.
Thank you.
You? And I think we're set with that. You're all set with that? We're done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, on to the CRA financial report.
So this is a little bit of a different format than what we're used to, because this is more for preparation of the budget. Presentation to follow. Just some things we wanted to touch on to bring back to some conversations that we've had in previous CRA meetings. We can go ahead and go to the presentation. Okay. So wanted to walk you through the CRA's financial position as of, so this is as of July 31st. And we'll look at how much money has been received, how much has been spent, what remains in each district, and how we plan to make future reports easier to understand. Can you go back one slide? Okay. So we labeled this transparency, and the main purpose of this report is all about transparency. The board and the public should be able to see where CRA money comes from, how it's being used, and what has been set aside for approved work. Let me go to the next slide. Okay. The cash position for each district. This slide shows the cash assigned to each CRA district as of July 31st. Altogether, the 3 districts have about $3.26 million. The central business has about $2.52 million, South Historic TIF about $450,000, and the North Historic has about $288,000. These
Mr. Cole. So if we follow just what we talked about, in our budgeting for this year with this cash amount, we need to encumber these funds or we need to turn them back to the taxing agencies. Is that correct?
No, there's
No.
a couple of options, and we'll run through that as well.
That's what I meant by encumber. We need to designate them, right? If we don't designate these by the end of the year, then technically by law, statute, they have to be returned, correct?
No.
There's a little more to it
There's a-
than
yeah,
that.
there's
So
a little more to
I
it.
think, and I think Ms. Roth's going to go over that as we move forward, okay?
But I know where you're going with that. It was what we just covered in, right, I know what you're referencing. You're welcome. Okay. These numbers tell us which districts the money belongs to, even though the city currently processes the cash through shared accounts. One important point, cash on hand is not the same as money available for new projects. Some of this money is already committed or encumbered and needed for future current operations. And one other thing I'll note on this, on the one-page cash schedule, which is one of the additional attachments that's in the packet, I wanted to explain that it shows $9,290 of old vouchers at the fund level, and that slide, Al3 will allocate those vouchers among the districts, and both are mentioned in those totals. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Fund balance is the accounting term for the CRA's overall financial position after considering both what it owes and what it owns and what it owes. We begin the year with an audited fund balance of $3.12 million, and through July, the CRA received about $1.5 million and spent about $912,000. And that's not considering things that are still committed or that have POs but may not have actually come out of the fund yet. We expect approximately $178,000 in additional spending during August and September, and based on that estimate, the CRA would end the year with a fund balance of somewhere around $3.8 million, and this is a projection, so the final amount may change.
Mayor, just a point of clarification, Ms. Oth, especially for those who don't have the presentation, you're referencing for FY 2026 revenue through July 31st. The second item is 1.5, is 1.05.
1.05,
In
sorry,
the
I read it
same,
wrong.
in the same for the projected fund balance at the end, it'll be 3.08 instead of 3.8.
Yes,
Just-
3.08.
Thank you.
I left out the zero.
That's okay, yeah.
Sorry.
I didn't want.
We can go to slide 5. Back one. Okay. How the tax increment is calculated and paid. The CRE is funded through tax increment revenue, and each district has a starting or base year property value. As property value grows above the starting point, a portion of the additional property tax revenue is paid into the CRA trust fund. For this fiscal year, the city and county contributed a total of $1.05 million, and the city's original payment was slightly too high because it used the wrong millage rate. So when that was calculated, it was using the previous of 6.4 and the current is 6.2. So the city's, this was an accounting correction that you'll notice in here. So the adjustment was for $11,229. And slide 6. There you go. This slide compares the amount budgeted with the amount actually spent. The amended budget is about $2.8 million, and through July, the CRA has spent about $912,000, or 32.4%. Another $8,955 is encumbered. Encumbered means the money has been formally reserved for an approved purchase or contract, but has not yet been paid. The remaining column is the amount still left in the budget category. It does not automatically mean that all of the money is available for new projects. And again, this also is not accounting for money that's committed but not necessarily encumbered. Yes, sir.
Sorry about that.
You're good.
Commissioner Wilkinson gets on me at the county all the time about that. Transfers and reimbursements, the 1.45495, is that the secondary page attachment that we have?
So there's 3 secondary pages. One is the cash position by district.
Yep. One says CRA transfers and reimbursements.
They're at so these are at the end
This is
of the
separate one.
presentation.
Yeah, it's page 123 of 137.
And these are attached because there's information from these that are part of your,
Mayor, I'm sorry. Ms. Correa. My question is, what are you referencing in the current presentation to trigger the question? I'm not sure.
I was just wanting to understand if this was the same information.
Oh,
That's,
okay.
so when we were looking at this, the budget versus actual on page 110 of 137, if this is a breakout of
Okay.
the amended budget of 1.45495 for the CRA transfers and reimbursements.
right. So these 3 documents are here because there is information from here that is part of the budget presentation.
Okay.
Yes, so that's why they're included.
Let's give Ms. Orth a chance to go through this, and then maybe it will be easier to ask clarifying questions.
And, okay. This was budget actual. This is slide 6. Okay, so we can move to slide 7. Yes, spending by project, yeah. This slide shows where project spending occurred, and of the $912,000 spent through July, about $448,000 went directly to projects listed here. The largest project was the Tillman House renovation at $256,275, and building improvement grants account for about $97,000. The other roughly $464,000 supported the work of operating the CRA, including staff, administration, police, and code compliance reimbursements. And I will make a reference to your project financial framework. This shows, and again, this goes back to a lot of things, money that's committed but not yet necessarily reflected here. There is money that is committed to projects like the building improvement grant. So there's money that'll be coming out for that for the fiscal year 26, where applicants have until August 31st to submit their reimbursement packets. So they still have time. So there's a lot of that money for the building improvement grant that you won't see reflected here that is still committed but hasn't come out of the budget. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we can go to the next slide. One more by TIF, slide 8, district updates. Yeah, I think, okay. So on this is the central business TIF. So the next 3 slides will be going over the district updates. So in the central business TIF, the central TIF has about $2.52 million in cash assigned to it. Through July, it has spent about $509,000, and about $8,700 is formally reserved through encumbrances. There is also $122,550 in approved awards that are not yet recorded as encumbrances. Those awards still need to be considered when we discuss how much the district can take on. Current active activity includes the building improvement grant, the redevelopment plan update, Christmas lights, Streetscape 2, Small Business Development Center, and public art. And then also the historic designation work being done for the National Register for the Central Business TIF.
Ms. Nicole, when we say administration, personnel, and reimbursements, that is the largest thing there, but we don't break that down. I don't know what those are. Is that Publix? Is that, you know what I mean? I have no idea.
So that would be
Couldn't
staff,
we get,
and that would be money for staff, and also administration. So if, for those services, the city services used,
how do we know what those are? And what is the, you know, once again, I'm asking that question that we asked previously. How do we get a handle on knowing what those are? Because I have no idea what we're, does that make, you understand what I'm trying
Yes.
to say? I mean,
he wants the breakout.
to me, this is the
Right.
largest part of our budget, and we have no itemization to tell us what we're spending on.
Right, so that would typically be what we've provided in the past, that has all the single GLs and the descriptions. We did not provide that here simply because this is overview of the financials.
Okay, so
That we're
when we,
using
when we
specific-
when we start to work on our new budget, we will
We'll
have
have each line
that
item.
itemized,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes,
So that we can figure out if we're using that money wisely.
right.
Okay. May I also go back to streetscape, in your form, on page 121 of 137, the 26 project financial framework. In a previous budget earlier this year, where we have streetscape 2 or 11, 911,684. There was a budget earlier this year that I questioned where that was transferred to the Better Place plan. And I didn't understand that, and then that was taken back out by our previous city manager. Now I see it listed as Streetscape 2, and I still don't understand what we're doing because our share of the streetscape was less than 500,000. So, because the state had the 1.5, and our share was that, so what is the 911 for streetscape from the city?
So their streetscape.
Yes.
And we're jumping a little bit ahead, so let me.
Right.
So streetscape is actually Streetscape 1. So when you're referring to how many years that project has been ongoing, Streetscape 1 is actually those intersections, the permeable pavers at the intersections, that is Streetscape 1. And this gets very confusing, so this took us a lot of work to kind of get everything together.
And if I might, Madam.
Go ahead, Ms.
Just
Curry.
We are skipping a little ahead. Your question
Yes.
is warranted because we've been asked for a full accounting of the streetscape, St. John's, Avenue streetscape project from beginning to end. That report has been prepared. It'll be in the agenda for the 24th.
Thank you.
So it's a pretty big report.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
so-
I'm just curious because it seems to me that we just retitled something.
No,
Yeah.
I follow you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it'll be clear the next meeting.
But we did put a lot of work into trying to put that piece together.
Thank you.
And
So,
Madam
7/24, it'll be in the agenda.
Okay, go ahead,
And
Ms.
Madam
Davis.
Chair, just a note under the reporting notes that defines streetscapes too, what finance did in order to segregate too. So
Yes.
there's
And
an
we've got-
explanation at the
Yes,
bottom.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Roth.
Okay, so that completed the central business TIF. We'll go to the next, which is South Historic. The South Historic District, or TIF, has about $450,000 in cash assigned to it. It has spent about $362,000, with a small amount formerly reserved through encumbrances. It also has $53,250 in building improvement grant awards that are not yet recorded as encumbrances. The largest expenses was the completion of the Tillman House renovation, and other activity includes the redevelopment plan update and the Grand Gables historic marker. We can go to the North TIF, which is the next slide. The North Historic TIF has about $288,000 in cash assigned to it. Through July, it has spent about $41,000. It does not currently have approved awards waiting to be recorded, and current project activity included just the small amount for the, what was spent for the handrails for the Bronson House. And then it also includes money spent for the redevelopment plan update. So each TIF does contribute to the plan update cost. You can go to slide 12, financial reports going forward. The last section covers improvements to financial reporting process, and the goal is to make it easier for the board and the public to follow each district's money from one report to the next. And then these are some of the proposed changes in how CRA activity will be recorded. 4 reporting improvements are underway. First, account names will now clearly identify the correct district. Second, and what I mean by that is where it said downtown previously, it'll be Central Business TIF. And then same with North and South, where it says South Historic District, now it'll say South Historic TIF. So those are the changes. Second, beginning in fiscal year 27, the interim city manager proposed placing each district in its own accounting fund. And third, Streetscapes 2, Sam, spending has been moved into one central business line, so the full project is easier to see. And then fourth, the city is reviewing the bank account structure to make sure CRA money is clearly identified and reported separately from non-CRA money. And these changes are intended to make the records clear and easier to follow. And these were requests.
Thank you for that. And because we had this discussion, I know it's one of Robbie's little quirks. I know there's the resolution that names the TIF districts, but hopefully we can issue a new resolution in the future so we can say South and North TIF and not historic, so we don't confuse the boundaries for everybody because they are different. And
We have discussed that. And I think another thing that we would want to consider when you go to the property appraiser's office and you pull up an address, it does actually, the designation for what TIF it's in does say South Historic or North Historic. So that's something we may want to look into as well, but that's how it's listed in the appraiser's office.
Right, probably because of that resolution, but
Exactly.
again, it's still, as a
Yeah.
property owner, confusing for folks.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. Updated account names. The account names have been updated to match the district names established by the resolution within the central business, North Historic and South Historic. This may seem like a small change, but it makes each transaction easier to identify and reduces the need for staff to rely on an internal crosswalk. Financial reporting structure, next slide. Going forward, staff recommends using the same 5-part report, cash by district, projected year-end fund balance, budget compared with actual spending, spending by project, and an update for each district. We are asking the board whether these are the right sections and how often it would like to receive that report. And then slide 16. This concludes the financial report through July 31st. The key point is that the CRA remains in a strong cash position, but the total cash figures should not be confused with money that is entirely free for new projects. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
No, I was just going to say, and of course, we'll have more clarification on the specifics of the budget at the actual CRA meeting and not get so into the weeds here. Go ahead.
Right.
Thank you for this report. My feedback is this financial report is very good, especially for our level of consideration, and I believe it provides enough, it's high level enough, but it also provides enough information where we can still ask specific questions if needed. So that's my feedback, and thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. And I have to give credit, Jen has helped me tremendously, and so has Ms. Ramos. So this was a team effort.
Thank you.
And I think it's also important, again, for the people in the community to have a better understanding of the budget and budget process and what the actual function of the CRA.
All right, so we're gonna hold our questions till potentially the next meeting.
For streetscape?
For a lot of this, when we go through and get the detailed budget and the breakout line by
Oh, like
line.
the line by line, yes.
Okay, would that make it easier for everybody? All right, let's do that.
So now we are at the budget presentation. See, this is a working projection of the CRA's fiscal year 27 budget, and it's meant to identify redevelopment priorities that could be supported within each district. These are not final adopted figures, and several items remain under review, including year-end balances, accrued liabilities, administrative service allocations, and certain project costs. My goal today is to confirm the board's priorities so that direction can be incorporated into final budget. Let me go to the next slide. These are 4 principles guiding the development of this budget. First, each TIF district remains a separate funding source. Revenue and available balances must be used for eligible redevelopment purposes within that district where they are generated. Second, I have separated the existing 26 commitments from the new fiscal year 27 capacity. This is important because funds are already committed to grants and projects that are not available for new initiatives. And third, the budget directs available resources toward active redevelopment priorities, including building improvement grants, residential rehabilitation, district identification, and public realm improvements. And then finally, these remain working estimates until 26 is formally closed and all outstanding costs and liabilities are identified. Next slide. The fiscal year 27 working projection reflects approximately $4.56 million in total resources. The largest component is the estimated $3.38 million balance forward. This is significantly higher than the balance forward included in the adopted 26 budget. However, that does not mean that all of the additional balances is uncommitted or available for unrestricted spending. Some of it supports projects and obligations that will continue into the beginning stages of fiscal year 27. Increment growth also varies considerably by district. The central business increased approximately 15.4%, South Historic increased 9.3%, and North Historic actually declined this year by approximately 3.5%. The main takeaway is that fiscal year 27 has greater total resources capacity, but most of that increase comes from accumulated balance rather than reoccurring annual revenue growth. And finally, these remain working estimates until fiscal year 26 is formally closed out and outstanding costs and liabilities are identified. Next slide. This is administrative and personnel considerations. This budget maintains the CRA's current staffing level. No additional positions are proposed. The cost estimate of the city administrative services is currently shown at approximately 5.2%, but this just remains a preliminary number until finance completes the final calculation and allocation among the districts. And this budget also includes a planning allowance for a potential reclassification of the coordinator position to a director position. This is not presented as an automatic or final adjustment. It's just simply here for consideration, negotiation, and formal approval. Next slide. expenditure status and fiscal year 27 budget development. This table provides a high-level comparison between the adopted 26 budget, actual expenditures through July 31st, and the fiscal year 27 working estimates. Personnel and operating expenses are projected to remain relatively stable. The personnel estimate includes a planning assumption for the potential position reclassification, and approximately $710,000 in capital outlay has been identified at this stage, but project costs and accounting classifications remain preliminary. Transfer and reimbursements remain the largest unresolved category, and finance is still reviewing how those lines should be treated and including the administrative service allocation. For that reason, I'm not presenting a final expenditure total today. This is a budget development snapshot intended to support board direction. Program and district investments. The proposed fiscal year 27 program investment focuses on 4 areas. The building improvement grant program is proposed at $200,000 across the 3 districts. And this is where I've implemented the residential rehabilitation is proposed at $125,000 with the largest allocations directed between the South TIF and North TIF. That's that program we've talked about previously in other meetings. So we will be adopting that. Approximately $96,000 is being planned for the South Historic Decorative Lighting Rehabilitation Project. Basically what that is, I received a list, if you will, from the folks in the South TIF of different things that they would like to see happen within that district. And one of the items on that list was the gas lamp poles. The poles need to be resurfaced. Some of them are broken. So this number here does seem high, but what we're looking at is if we can just rehab the existing poles, it would probably be less than this. But if we need to replace those, this cost is a projection of what it would cost to replace the poles and install them, and also have the arms to hang banners that would have like a banner that says South Historic TIF, or South Historic District. So that's what this number reflects. So this would be up to $96,000. An additional $20,000 is proposed for North and South District identification, and what that is, the markers that say South Historic District or North Historic District. The one that was in the south was taken out by an automobile during an accident. The one in the North TIF, I have pictures of it. It's pretty old. It has yellowed. It's got a lot of wear, probably needs to be replaced. So that's what the identification for the districts are. These represent new fiscal year 27 program allocations, and existing 26 grant awards and project commitments are being tracked separately, so they do not reduce or distort the new program capacity shown here.
Quick question on the signage for the south, the one that was destroyed by a vehicle. Was that at the end coming in from Krill?
Krill, yes.
And that was not on CRA property. That's not in the CRA.
Well, okay, because
That property is not in the CRA where the signage was located previously, unless we're going to, otherwise you end up putting it on private property like Larry Beaton's. But that lot, that city lot, is not within the CRA boundaries.
So I'm going to make sure we're on the same, where what they call the island, where that island is, 7th and Krill, and so on that other corner adjacent to it, there's almost looks like a little triangle of grass, and then the sidewalk. That's where I was under the impression, or
That's where the sign was, yes.
Okay.
But that had to be paid for by the association, the neighborhood association, because that is not within the CRA boundaries. And just to,
Okay,
as somebody who was the past president, we had to pay for that out of our funds.
that's good to know.
Yeah.
I was under the impression it was on that side of the CRA.
No, it's on the opposite side. That side would be Larry Beaton's yard. So just for
I'm
clarification.
making a note here.
So it was taken out by an automobile accident?
Yes.
I'm sure we didn't get the tag or anything to go after.
We have no idea about, but it's pretty old, actually.
I would still like to have some figures on how many homes are in the south, how many businesses are in the South District, how many central, but how many homes are in there? Because I think there's probably more homes than in the north historic. And so, can we get numbers?
Yes, and I will tell you how I came to this, though, just as information. So, we have the building improvement grant, right, and that's administered every year. I base this on applicants. So where are those applications coming from? How many are from the north TIF? How many from the south and the central? Based on the number of applicants coming from each district, central business doesn't have anyone applying for the business improvement grant as far as residential. They are all commercial properties that have applied for that. So
The sheet that I passed out did not say residence, because I would have applied, because I live in it. It did not open that door to residential at that time. And there might have been a miscommunication there, and that's why I want to look at the numbers, because where I live, that whole section south or west of Krill is almost all residential, and we're all in the central district.
Well, I will say the building improvement grant is open for both residential and commercial, because we've had multiple applicants that were residential applicants in every single cycle that I've went back and reviewed.
And they've also been in the different TIF districts.
Yes.
And Sven's house on Oak,
Right, that's residential.
and that's residential, it's in the central business TIF.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm for clarification. If I'm in the south, say I'm Duck Realty, I can apply for the residential building grant in the South District?
If you are there's no distinction. The only distinction is on the application. It'll ask you if it's residential or commercial.
Okay.
But as far as who can apply, there's no distinction whether you're residential or commercial.
Okay, I'm getting a better picture, and I
Greg,
appreciate
and that's
that.
actually a mixed use, and they did get a grant on the
Right,
Duck
I
Realty
think,
building.
yes.
I mean, was
No,
that helpful?
I'm clear, but I'm not quite sure that we were clear on the other end with the residents, and so that would be my concern, but that can be remedied very easily. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Bourne?
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. But in terms of getting the advertisement out, I do know that each one of the districts have a president or some representative who they have regular meetings. That's what I understood from the inception of the program. So I don't know how active it is or not, but I think, sound like from what I'm hearing from Mr. Deputy, is that from an advertisement and communicating to the eligible individuals, doesn't seem like it's getting to that, and that's been kind of like a theme from the time that this program been in inception since I've been on the board. So that may be something that you guys may want to think about as terms of how we're getting the word out as it relates to the funds that's available so that they can utilize those funds.
And we've had lengthy discussions about that. I don't know if we've ever resolved it entirely. Each neighborhood association, they seem to be pretty non-functional these days. And the central business TIF has never had, that was in a previous plan, to have representation, a committee to make recommendations to the board, and that never materialized. So, again, those don't exist really, or, so I don't know.
But you won't get the development, you won't, the funds are there, and if the people are not being reached, then how are we going to redevelop and improve the areas?
Go ahead, Mr. Alexander.
Well, I was patiently waiting.
Do you want us to come back to you in a second?
Yeah, come back. Give me a second.
Go ahead.
So, one of the things, and this is a question for you, Ms. Oth, because we talked about this extensively in a previous meeting. Where did you land on how to market and get this information out?
So currently, we rely on our website, so the information is posted on the website. We were advertising it via Greta with social media communications. And then, of course, you rely on people to send that out. And then also, I sent out information to what, at that time, when we designated district representatives, sent it out to them. However, to the mayor's point, there hasn't been a whole lot of engagement when it comes to certain things through those representatives, if any. The South Historic seemed to be the most active in that respect. So those are the avenues that we've been using. And then at previous board meetings, we discussed mailing.
Correct.
Like, but that, you know, once I presented the numbers, the board decided not to go that route. Because we would have to have a budget allocation for that in this fiscal year's budget. And I brought that to the board. It was like, I don't know, $2,400 is kind of what we estimated. And that didn't really land well or go anywhere.
Go ahead, Commissioner, Mr. Alexander.
I would definitely like to revisit the mailer or the flyer, but I would also like to volunteer my time for perhaps our next function downtown, perhaps Blue Crab or Azalea, to set up a tent and even man that for a couple hours. I'll be happy to do that so we can share that information physically. Because I think we get a lot of participation down there, and perhaps we can create some enthusiasm and some engagement about these programs face to face.
And
I'm also willing to walk things. I mean, I walk or ride my bicycle constantly around the neighborhood in downtown, so I'm willing to be a delivery girl.
Yeah.
And I also think there's some other conversations that we can have around that as well, which at the August 24th meeting, the building improvement grant, there's information that will be presented there. And I think there's an opportunity for discussion that will also help provide some clarification as to why these numbers are what they are as far as participation. So I don't want to get too far into that for this exercise, but you'll understand when we have that information at the next meeting on the 24th.
Did you have something else, Mr.
I do. I see an enthusiasm building within this group, and I'd like to capitalize on it because this is a great program. It's a great opportunity for our residents, and I don't think that a lot of them are aware of it. So I think it's our job to get that message out as members of this committee. Not board, is it a committee or a board today? It's a board. It's a board, but yeah, anything that I can do to help, I'd be happy to participate.
Sounds good. Okay. Next slide. Central Business TIF. Okay. The Central Business District continues to generate the strongest increment growth, increasing approximately 15.4%. The proposed budget includes $125,000 for the building improvement grant and $25,000 for the residential rehabilitation. No new Larimar Art Center appropriation is proposed at this stage, and any future CRA participation should follow board direction regarding the city-owned facility and the eligible redevelopment benefit of the proposed improvement. The budget also maintains funding for visible downtown improvements, including wayfinding, Christmas lights, public art, which will be transitioning to the public art grant, and approximately $40,000 for consolidated landscaping and maintenance. And I will say for the landscaping, I've already submitted information for the request to bid for that because that contract ends in October. So we'll have a better number once those bids start coming in. Overall, the district retains strong redevelopment capacity, but existing obligations must remain separate from funding available for new projects. Next slide. The South Historic District increment increased approximately 9.3%, and the primary Tillman House renovation phase is substantially complete. Well, it's actually 100% complete. Retaining $25,000 for closeout and incidental costs would release approximately $275,000 of previously reserved capacity for other district priorities. The largest new project in the South Historic decorative lighting is the decorative lighting rehabilitation project. This includes replacement of approximately 19 deteriorated gas lamp assemblies, followed by coordinated historic district banners. The current planning estimate is approximately $96,000, but the final installation, with the final installation cost still pending. The budget also proposes $50,000 for building improvement grant and $50,000 for residential rehabilitation. Additional capacity is maintained for landscaping, district identification, code compliance activities, and possible site amenities. The North TIF is the next. The North Historic District is the only district experiencing a year-over-year decline in increment revenue, with a decrease of approximately 3.5%. Because reoccurring revenue is declining, the proposed budget emphasizes focused investments with a direct district benefit. The priorities shown are residential rehabilitation and stabilization, building improvement grant capacity, co-compliance support, and visible historic district identification. The proposed allocations are $50,000 for residential rehabilitation, $25,000 for the building improvement grant costs, and $10,000 for the historic district identification. The objective is to address property conditions and neighborhood identity while remaining mindful of the district's more limited reoccurring revenue.
Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I need to step back a little bit, and this is regarding probably the central, let me make sure I'm on the right page. Regarding Larimar Art Center. So I have a question. You know, in our training, you mentioned that there are some items that need to be decided between the city and the CRA board. So for Larimar, I believe, I don't have the date, but when we had the last consideration for the work that's needed
Yes.
over there, the CRA board voted no to contributing funds.
Correct.
The city voted yes.
Correct.
Okay. And that decision really, what's critical to that is the grant that was applied for.
Yes, ma'am.
Because it had a match that was required to even apply. And I am concerned that when we're not in sync, I think we've created a conundrum for all of us. So may I ask, was the grant applied for?
The grant was applied for.
Okay, the grant was applied for, but we haven't met the requirements to apply for the grant, if I'm understanding this correctly, with that split decision. And
Right.
in addition, we don't know fully even how much it's going to cost to do the renovation. Do we have that number? And where I'm going is, we sat in this training, I'm thinking about myself and the questions I ask or don't ask when we're considering.
Sure.
And I'm just revisiting that as an example of, I don't know that I fully understood the impact and the sequence of things that needed to occur. Because obviously, I believe, number one, we should know how much money we need. Two, whether or not this grant could cover it. And number three, if we do apply for the grant, that we have buy-in from both the CRA and the city to allocate dollars for the required match. And so we are really, again, disjointed and disconnected in both order and decisions and understanding ramifications of how we vote on these items. So I'm going to stop there. I don't know what my question is. Well, I guess I do know what my question is. My question is, how do we move forward?
So
And I also think we need to mention that there was in the budget allocation for work on the Larimer, already in the budget prior to this last vote. So there was, and so, one minute, excuse me, please. And so there was, that match money was already kind of there for improvements to the Larimer and this last year's budget for the CRA.
Yeah, so if I may, Mayor?
Go ahead, Ms. Roth.
So just
Let Ms.
to-
Roth go first, please, because I wasn't
So
even
this
finished.
might answer,
The same question, Madam Chair.
But I wasn't finished either, but let Ms.
so
Roth go.
this might provide some additional context. So the CRA currently has a GL for the Larimer renovations, and it's $150,000. That was approved by the CRA board in the previous year. So that money's already there. That's why when we applied for the grant, I committed the $125,000 for the CRA because the money was already for that
It was
purpose.
already allocated.
I did hold out $25,000 for incidentals that the grant would not cover, which would be like the security system, replacing the chairlift, and those things. So that's why there was the reserve of the 25. To your question regarding how much everything is going to cost, so we have multiple, and I can draft basically a summary of everything. I'll make it one full list, but it's going to be several $100,000 because we need a new roof. It needs weatherproofing. There's some structural or some foundation issues.
Tenting for termites.
Yep, now we just recently found out that there is a bunch of termites. I have a picture and there's just a ton of termites. So that's where the city and the CRA have overlapping obligations because it is a city-owned property. However, in the purview of the CRA, it is a historic building, so it falls under historic preservation. It is also, they use it for community programming, so it is used for community functions, whereas, like I had alluded to earlier, you can't use CRA funds on City Hall because it has government offices. But this is a historic building that is used for community programming. So that is how all of those line up from the CRA.
And I just wanted to finish mine up, please, because I think the other portion of this, because it is a significant historic structure, it's a Clutho design structure, one of only 2 remaining in the city, that we do have an obligation to take care of it, preserve it, and maintain it. But also, we are not really going to know to the extent of the work that needs to be done until some of it starts. Having restored several historic buildings, until you open things up, you don't know the extent of it. Most historic buildings of this caliber, there is usually an assessment done by an architect engineer team that specializes in historic structures, so they come up with a plan for us. So over time, we may have to do the more pressing things, such as the roof and tenting, but if other things can wait. But if we have this plan, we know where we're operating from and where we need to go. And I think that would be our first step. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to finish. So a couple of things you said that I still gives me pause and concern. One is you said, you know, it's going to be several $100,000.
Yes, ma'am.
We do know that, but that doesn't.
Right.
Going back to, we do need an assessment to understand what's needed. The other item I want to clarify, you mentioned in the CRA approved budget, there was $150K already approved in the budget for Larimar.
Yes, ma'am.
So what did we vote on?
As far as,
That did not pass?
so the use of the allocation of the CRA share for the grant of $125,000.
Money was already in the budget to be
Yes.
used for the
It was
Larimer.
already in the budget to be
I'm
used.
trying to understand what these sidebars mean, because again, this is what leads to convoluted conversation.
Right.
I want to know, here's my question. The $150K approved budget item for the Larimar exists, which means it can be used for the Larimar
Yes,
with
ma'am.
no additional.
Correct.
Okay, so then what did we vote on that was, why did we require a vote? Or
So
why
the
did we
vote-
require a vote?
So the vote was because we were going to take that 150 and split out 125 to include as part of the match for the grant for the renovations, because it's going to cover all of those renovations. So essentially, we would take the 125, we'd get additional grant money and be able to do more than what we could do with just the $150,000.
So the reason I'm asking, why did we vote?
I was going to say, why
The
was
money
the
is
vote-
allocated, that's
Yeah.
confusion,
Okay.
because you could have said we have the money. Whether you use 75 for match and 75 for
That would be in the purview
security.
of the director, so we should have just,
So
it should have
that's-
been purely informational. This is what we're
Right, well,
using the
so
money
I
for.
think where the confusion is, it was put in a resolution.
Okay,
And there was, the resolution is where
who who started the resolution? I just want to walk through our process, because this is
I
going to,
got
may help me submit a change
Okay,
in the
so-
way we're doing things,
Right,
because
so
this is
I
not
get that. I follow
correct.
you now, so I apologize. So we've had multiple conversations in the past about commission authority versus CRA Board Authority. So whenever we put a resolution in place, it goes before the commission. So in this case, we wanted to acknowledge the CRA Board as its own authority and have a resolution for that 125 presented to the CRA Board. I know it's very confusing, and
No.
that's why
Can I say it's not confusing? I think it's unnecessary. And I'm concerned if that's guidance that you were given, that it caused an unnecessary action. And now we're considering that resolution is not passed, and you can't use the money. Am I correct in my thought? So again, I'm concerned that you were given, if you were given direction, that was not the approach to take, because we have to all understand our level of authority and use it appropriately. Those are things that come to this board that cause unnecessary confusion, and it blocks us from meeting the goals that you just gave us in our direction for this CRA. I'm going to stop there.
Okay, no, all valid points. My understanding of the vote regarding the expenditure of those funds, if they were indeed already budgeted for that facility, it would be my understanding that we were voting to spend the money on which priority of that building. At this case, say we've got $150,000 earmarked for that particular facility. And with the information that we were just enlightened about regarding the termites, takes me back to a story. I spent about $4,000 on a Mustang for my wife. I invested about $10,000 in it, and I was still about $10,000 away from having a $5,000 Mustang. So would we perhaps be better to spend that money to, as you said, do an evaluation on the building to get a total cost to see if that's where we are? But I know we're further along in this process, and I don't want to miss the opportunity to get that grant money to contribute to that. But are we throwing good money after bad? I don't want to miss the opportunity, so don't mistake what I'm saying. I agree with you.
If that was a question, what I'm saying is, let me be clear. I hear your understanding, and I'm going back to the point that we obviously all had different understandings to vote on something and come to a conclusion that is having a dire consequence at this point. What I'm offering is that we, number one, need to understand the work that needs to be done, because if we did, we wouldn't assume the things that have been reporting were all-inclusive, and we wouldn't just be hearing about termites. For example, to your point, Mr. Alexander, so what I'm saying is we absolutely need to understand the work that has to be done, however that fits in, and then we need to do it accordingly. What I want to understand is when we voted on this resolution and did not pass it, what is the impact, and what can we do now with this understanding of what we've done that was not even necessary?
Might direct that towards Ms. Hodges as to how we can move forward to correct this. And so because the reality is that assessment is going to cost more than $150,000. So we need that grant money. Okay, but go ahead, let's ask Ms. Hodges. I have a question to Ms. Then you, 1 minute, Mr. Deputy. I was going to ask Ms. Hodges for her legal.
And I just wanted to know, the grant we're applying for, how much is it? Are we getting a
Wait a minute,
$100,000 grant? I mean, how much is the grant we're applying for?
If I might, Madam
Go
Mayor.
ahead, Ms.
So
Curran.
prior to my coming on as the interim city manager, the commission did receive a resolution to consider. And it was for application to the Department of Community Affairs, I believe it is, state, for a grant totaling $624,000 that required a match from the city, $312 from the state, and $312 from the city. The way the resolution was written, the match was coming from both the city and the CRA. What the commission ended up approving, the city commission approved $187,000 coming from city resources in that resolution. But the resolution, and it was, the 187 was to be paid out over fiscal '27 and fiscal '28, not even in '26. But there was no specification of where those dollars would be coming from. The commission simply approved the 187, and in the resolution, it also stated that the CRA was going to be contributing $125,000. That came to the city commission. I think because the CRA was put into that resolution, I'm going to use the word maybe prematurely, because it had not come before the CRA board for you to say, yes, we too want to be a part of the grant application, and yes, we have funds set aside for that purpose, 150.
Right.
The cart was before the horse, in essence. And so when it came back to this is me after the fact, when it came back to the CRA board, I'm not quite sure where the confusion came in terms of what you thought you might have been voting for, but it really was to apply for a grant with a match requirement.
Right.
That, with a grant requirement, you already had a line with money in it for that purpose, but you were going to be applying to the state for a grant to match what the city had the city had, put forth a little bit more than the 125. But again, all of it together added up to $312,000 to match $312,000 from the state.
Right.
And I guess what I'm hearing from the discussion right now is the $624,000 total could probably be used, but we don't have a plan necessarily as to how to really use it. Other things over at the Larimer, $1.5 million, $2 million, $3 million, don't really have an idea. But could the monies be used? Sure, they could be used. So yes, there was confusion, but I think the cart was before the horse as it relates to the CRA board. The city commission heard it, but the CRA board came kind of later.
My questions on the whole thing were policy, and that's where I agree with Ms. Davis, is we don't have a policy for the difference between business owners, merchant owners, residential, and city-owned buildings. So I still say the policy should be the same across the board. If a building owner can't get a grant for a roof, the city should not. In actuality, I believe that if the big program is good enough for the merchants, it's good enough for the city, because we should not be shorting. I mean, it's a taxpayer's money, and these 283 buildings are doing this, and yet you're giving to the city what you will not give to them. And I think we need a policy, and we have none, so that everybody is treated the same. And because this means, if we approve this, this means that any organization or business can come to the CRA and we can say, well, go to the grant program. Well, no, you allowed the city to come in the side door and ask for a line item. For a building that the city owns, is the city not the same as an entity of the business? Two, when we start discussing termites, I'm sorry, but that's a commission, that's a maintenance issue for the city commission. That's not an issue of the CRA, because once again, you're not tenting my building for termites. And so I think we're getting mixed up with our policies. What is the difference between renovation for redevelopment and maintenance? And because you haven't done maintenance, does the CRA have to step in to do the renovation maintenance for a building that was not taken care of? I have a 1903 building. All of us downtown do. Are you going to do, is the CRA going to do maintenance for 283 business buildings? So I think we need some policies, and that's where we're, what is maintenance? What is renovation for renovation, for redevelopment? When we put bathrooms in, I love that because those buildings never had bathrooms. So that was a great rehabilitation for redevelopment.
That's a great parlay. I would like to take a break so we can also
Excellent point.
Excellent point, isn't it? So,
I think we need to have this discussion at the actual CRA.
Thank you,
to see how
thank
we're
you.
going to move forward. I don't totally agree with Mr. Deputy, but he knows that. We're not talking about using this money to temp per se. We're using it as a match for a grant, and that grant funds would be, this money is not even going to do that assessment in reality. And so whatever else needs to be done, and whether the city has neglected these buildings, I don't disagree with you, but we can't let this building be destroyed. I'm sorry. I feel this is such a significant structure.
And this isn't the city coming to the CRA and applying for a grant.
Correct.
This is us going to
Yes.
a grantor and collectively as a shared, where this is where that overlap between city and CRA takes place for historic preservation, is we are applying collectively to a grantor for additional funds for us to renovate the Larimer.
Once downtown is on the National Register, the Central Business District, if it does happen, then you too, for your building, can apply for a state or federal grant.
thank you.
Mayor, I'm sorry, Chair. What I'd like to request is that for our next, the 24th, that we have this as an agenda item, which will allow the attorney and city manager and finance and the CRA coordinator to get together and come up with a plan to review this. Yeah, on how to move forward. Thank you.
We are almost done.
Okay, we are almost done. Okay, cool. One minute, one person at a time, please. Go ahead, Mr. Deputy.
Yes, sir.
There is another thing that I was concerned about here. We look at the north side as decreasing in value 3.5%. That's a concern to me.
Same.
When one of our premier neighborhoods is declining, and I think we need to, in this budget, I have a whole list of things I'd like to see added. I think we need to look at that to see why this is declining. That should be, I circled it, because that's a red glare to me. We need to figure that out and see what we can do to whatever is not happening there to, why did it decline? I mean, what was the reasoning?
I don't know if decline is quite the right word. From the real estate perspective, the market has been so bad in the last year, and many of the homes in the North Historic District are owned by families that have owned them forever, so the revenue market value is not increasing, and then for those that are on the market for sale, they're not selling. So I don't know how much that's impacting all of this.
Why would they not be selling if the south side is selling?
The south side's not really selling either, but there's a couple of bigger ones that have that make things
I
jump
just would
up.
like to look at that.
We can,
So you're saying that it's just stagnation, not necessarily declination?
I don't think, yes, I'm not saying, I think it's more market stagnation than it is deterioration of the neighborhood per se. Okay, Ms. Ock, could you please take it?
all right, so on to the next slide, existing commitments and GL transition. This slide separates known fiscal year 26 obligations from 27 spending. The largest commitment, $133,750 in approved building improvement grant awards, $80,500 in central business, and $53,250 in South Historic. There is also a $7,500 public art commitment for the Heartbeat of Palaca Annex project and Down Memory Lane City Hall panels. Those are the murals. The Downtown National Register Historic District project has a total existing commitment of $50,000, and of that amount, $15,450 is associated with the existing purchase order for payment and that is currently processing, leaving $34,550 remaining. Together, these known commitments total $191,250, and these funds are already obligated and should not be viewed as available for 27 projects. There are several items that must be resolved before the budget is finalized. First is the transfers and reimbursement category remains under finance review. 11 existing budget lines currently show no 27 projection while their appropriate treatment is determined. And second, the 5.2% administrative service allocation is preliminary. Third, accrued liabilities as of September 30th are not yet known, and those obligations will affect the actual amount available for balance forward. Finally, several project costs remain estimates, particularly installation for the South Historic Lighting Project. Staff will update these figures as finance completes its review and final project costs become available.
Madam Mayor, if I might intervene for a second. Earlier in the conversation, Mr. Alexander mentioned the page 123 of 137 that is titled Fiscal 2026 CRA Transfers and Reimbursements. This is a significant amount of money, and not only in the CRA budget, but in the city's budget, and it's taking us a little while to just kind of peel it back to make sure that we understand what each line represents. So you can still see a couple items here under development, but we want to work this through a little bit more before the budget is finalized, and so that's why we're not really prepared to go into any level of detail and certainty with a conversation with you tonight.
Right. So what the board is asked to decide. Today, I'm asking the board for direction in 3 areas. First, are the proposed grant programs and district allocations consistent with the board's 27 priorities? The board may also want to discuss whether the balance forward resources should specifically be assigned to these programs. And second, does the board want staff to explore commissioning an indirect cost study to provide a more formal basis for allocating city administrative services to the CRA? And third, are there other projects or priorities the board wants staff to evaluate and price before the budget returns for adoption? Following today's direction, staff will refine the estimates and return within the proposed final budget. Once adopted, the budget must be transmitted to the county within 10 days as required by Florida law. Thank you. This is your budget presentation, and I'm available for questions as needed.
Thank you, Ms. Arthur. So at this point in time, this would be potentially where we would discuss the specifics of these projects and where we're at and what we want to see more specific questions on. Like when Mrs. Davis was talking about, it concerns me, and I'm still new to this, but when we have a budget line item for, say, the Larimer or streetscape or whatever, it's $150,000. Do we have an idea what we're going to spend that on? Because I would like to know, if I've got $150K allocated, earmarked for this program, is it for the roof? Is it for what's it for? And that would prevent us from having to come in here and break it out and vote and have a potentially contentious, discussion about that. If it's all set in stone in the beginning, this is what we've got it for. And I don't know, that's not you, because you're new to this as well, and we're looking for improvements. That's what I would like to see. I would like to say, hey, we've got 150 here for the deck, we've got 200 for the roof, we got this and that. Which parts of these can we afford to absorb this year? I would just like to see detailed, large items.
A summary of
Yep.
like a scope of work.
Yes, exactly. That's how I'm accustomed to doing things in the mechanical contracting side, so.
And that was my suggestion for having professionals that deal with historic structures coming up with this plan so that we have a, 3-year, 5-year plan for the Larimer's restoration, rehabilitation, and we're doing it correctly, but yet we may not have all the funding. We need to just prioritize.
Right. What do we got to do to stop the deterioration so that we're not having to continue to invest money? It's going to get worse. What can we do to mitigate the deterioration now so that we can maintain this property? Because the last thing I want to do is lose a historic building of any sort. I grew up in a historic building. I'm passionate about that, so never mistake that.
But I also feel like that's where, when we have those conversations about city versus CRA participation, right? You have to outline what that looks like, and then you put a plan of action that is in line with your redevelopment plan, but it's ongoing. So you would have X amount of dollars for this year for any incidentals, X amount for this, and that's just to maintain it so you don't get into this level of deterioration now, all of a sudden, you know, this, we're, you know, it's
Well,
a
when you
fight.
have a professional assertion of the building, did this problem, was it a maintenance issue that created this problem? Or is it a deterioration blight type issue? And those are the things that would determine whether it was a city-owned portion of
And
the
I-
repair or a CRA-owned portion of the repair. But you take our personal beliefs out of it, and you have a professional tell you, this is where it is, and this is potentially where the responsibility should lie. Because I don't feel like the CRA should be funding repairs that were due to lack of maintenance.
And I
But
think
this-
it's a little bit of both, because there is probably some deterioration due to not having maintenance, but then there's also foundation or structural issues. Well, that's not a maintenance issue, that's just settling over time. So it's-
Correct, and if we have a professional tell us that, it takes us out, because I
Right.
don't think there's anybody on this board, myself included, that can go out and dig through that building and tell you every aspect of it and what the problems are attributed to.
Right, and that's where you get to, you start peeling back the onion, and now we really don't know what we're gonna find.
Exactly. So we don't know how much money we're gonna spend.
Right.
Mr. Deputy. So, you're wanting also for us to tell you what other projects we might like to see?
Yes.
Okay, I definitely want to get these intersections redone. Because now there's water pooling, thumps, the 8 intersections are going to be a hazard. Well, they're already a hazard. And I would like to see that in next year's budget to get those, and you've already done, I've got the estimate that we've already got on that.
For the geotech board.
Right, and I think we just need to pave them. We have been promised over and over and over more electricity on the west end so that we may do the festivals down there that are doing on the east end.
It's out on St. John's Avenue?
Yes.
Okay.
And that was cut. And so actually what we have in some of our blocks is less electricity with the new streetscape than we had under the old. And so we were promised more electricity the whole time, along with the flag pole.
I'm going to call for a point of order. Hold that thought. So the reason I'm going to call for a point of order, Madam Chair, is I want to ensure that our board member is speaking as a board member, so
Yes.
using the
No, I
right
know.
language
Yes.
as a board member versus
Right.
anything else.
I am thinking of the 8 blocks from 4th up, because those are the things that we were promised 8 years ago when that project started, along with the goldfish that were painted, if you remember, on the thing. The intersections, electricity, flag poles, and I had some people get off the train and try to find their way around Palatka, and it didn't happen. They ended up at my business totally lost.
Did they buy anything?
They did. They did.
That's way
That's
The
wayfinding signage. We've already talked about that.
Right,
yeah.
and I really want us to hit that wayfinding to get people where they need to be in there. So those are some projects I would like to see in this next year's budget.
Go ahead, Mr. Bora.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Chairperson. Madam Chair. But anyways, just to get back to the point, I know we were talking about the projects and various things as it relates to just the overall transparency of what we're spending. We see dollar amounts, but also we always talk about, want to tie things back. So I've always asked for including the line items, whatever that cost center is that's associated with it, as well, so that it stays with it for the most part. Now, I'm not sure if that's,
No, I was gonna ask you, when you say line item, do you mean the GL account number?
yeah, that goes with the project. Yeah,
Okay,
with
that's what
with the amount, and then just say some of them might require more cost centers or line items, numbers that go with it to pay for the project. So if those stay with it, along with the spend and the remaining balance in those accounts, percentage spent, that'll be very, very helpful. The other thing, when we're talking about the intersections, among other projects as well that we do throughout the city, mainly in the CRA area. But we're putting in projects that the quality of the work and the warranty that goes with the work is not being administered appropriately, and we allow for the warranty period to expire before we take action against poor quality work. And so I would like to see more of that being addressed earlier than
you're asking
before.
proactive, to be
very proactive in the process of not allowing.
During the drafting of the contract, ideally, language specifically for that.
Absolutely.
Got you.
When we talk, and then performance is built into the contract, but we're not holding the people accountable.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Deputy, when we do projects in the city, when you're talking about the electrical service, who provides that? Is that a city utility, or does FPL come in and do that, or who handles that?
Well, FPL brought downtown the new lamp poles 2 summers ago.
Yes, sir.
And put them in. One of the things that we asked the downtown is how come there weren't plugs in those?
Yes, sir.
The city didn't ask for them, and it was too late to get them at that point. That's what we were told. But in each landscaping plot, there is a plug-in, and that is the city's. And when you do a festival, the city turns them on, turns them off, and then usually charges the festival for the electricity.
Okay.
And it allows us to have activities basically from 5th Street to the river. Down from 5th Street to 11th, those electricals either don't exist or never worked right. And so we couldn't even have Christmas lights for 3 years now.
Okay.
And so the new ones are being put in, but we're getting less than we had previously.
So
with less landscaping than
this is
previously.
just for clarification for me.
Yes.
So, because when somebody says more electricity, I don't know if you mean amperage, do you mean outlets?
Outlets.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you need
outlets.
more outlets and
Right,
service
right.
receptacles.
Yeah,
Okay.
for example, there were usually
Because I didn't know if
10
you were talking about they had 50 amps, 30 amps, 15 amps.
There
So
were-
it's just outlets.
Previously, there were 10 trees on a block, and each one had an outlet.
Yes, sir.
We're cutting that back to 6 trees now, with 6 outlets.
But we could temporarily fix that by providing surge protectors.
Right, that's why I'd like to have it in the budget, to have
Okay.
that done.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Thanks, Madam Chair. But just piggybacking off of Mr. Deputy's point as it relates to power, I do know that the power was put in down at the riverfront, and it was fairly new installation, and we have a lot of events downtown. And so when there's functions, it doesn't handle the load very well, and it trips, from my understanding. So I do think that we need to look at reevaluating the electricals.
Maybe
At
do
the
a
riverfront?
load study or something on that area?
Yes, sir. They're going to need to do something because, and again, that's where we go, where we invested the monies, but what people are trying to put on and do, it don't support the event.
And I think you're referencing the power near the amphitheater? Is that what you're specifically
The
referencing?
amphitheater and the surrounding areas.
Okay.
And to that, may I?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Alexander, we wanted power at the courthouse because you're minus power on that whole side of the courthouse, and we wanted to have that put in. We didn't get a single outlet
And that's
on
on the
that
county.
side, and that's on the county, but we were pushing for that project. The courthouse is a fantastic venue, but there is no power and I would love to see that so that more events could be held at the courthouse, but
Yeah,
that's
shoot-
an issue.
Shoot me a text tomorrow.
You got it. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Go ahead.
Regarding the indirect cost study, I am a proponent of having an indirect cost study. I don't know what the board feels, but one of the questions that we have been asking over and over and over is understanding the transfers, how do they go? And I think in order to understand that, we would, I believe we need an indirect cost study unless there is some other methodology acceptable in lieu of that, that would be as effective. If not, I would like to see that to ensure that we are allocating and paying for indirect costs appropriately and are able to explain how we're doing those.
Is that specifically for the Larimer or for all large-scale projects?
This is for the CRA, what the board needs to decide. I
Okay.
was just going back. This is,
But-
this is a general.
In general, so large-scale projects, yes.
Let me say, I'm going to just stop there because I think you guys are adding on what I'm
Okay.
not saying.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to stop there, and if Mayor, Madam Chair, if City Manager could respond.
An indirect, if I might, Madam Mayor, an indirect cost study is important in, I would say, maybe a city larger than Palatka. When you have utilities involved and, larger departments, larger enterprise funds that require that kind of study. And it is important, too, when you start to get audited and there is a concern about, what is being transferred, why, on what basis, what methodology are you using. In the city of Palatka's case, I think the way it's been done in the past is you list out the departments that fit into what you call an administrative pool, the city commission, the city manager's office, the finance department, except public information officer, clerk's office, et cetera. You figure out that cost, and then you take a look at the cost of all of the other entities that feed off of that pool. And then, for instance, in the case of the airport, the utilities, the CRA, they have budgets, and then you basically apply a percentage based on how much they represent, right? And so it's not a hard number to come by. Right now, it's 6.2 or 3, whatever the percentage was here. It may be less based on the city's budget for '27, because that budget is being adjusted as we speak. And so that percentage will probably come down, but that's how I think it should be done internally. I can't speak to how it was done in fiscal '26. I'm talking about how I'm looking at it in '27 without an indirect cost study in place. That explanation will be provided as soon as we boil that number down, not only to the CRA board, but we'll provide that calculation to the city as well. But you can hire a firm to do that indirect cost study. I know the counties, Miami-Dade did it, larger organizations do it, because you need it really when you're doing your financial audit and you want to justify, what you're charging and why you're charging it. So.
Okay. Well, Madam, thank you. So, Madam Chair, then I want to withdraw my statement about supporting an indirect cost study. And remember, I said unless there is another appropriate methodology, and I am in favor of using that methodology because of what we've heard here.
Yes, Madam Mayor, and I'm not speaking against it.
No.
I mean, honestly,
At this time, at this point in time of where the city is, and I believe that, and I am hearing an acceptable methodology of how we can do that, that would get us to that point.
If I might, Madam Mayor, I want to look at the finance director, and I want some concurrence, if I can, from you as to our ability to actually make that calculation based on, what we have to work with right now. Microphone.
Hi. Can you hear me? I would suggest looking at what was done in the past, but then also what some other municipalities in the area do, and also GFOA guidelines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And pretty much we're using that. We're using that, but like I said, I'm not speaking against having an indirect cost study. I just think right now the cost of the study is not necessarily warranted for what we're working with. We have an administrative pool. We know what that budget looks like. We know what the operating budget looks like overall for everybody that feeds off of that pool, and then it's a percentage, based on the enterprise funds from that point on.
Okay.
But
Well, I'm good. Well, at this point, I'm not going, I don't believe we need to pursue an indirect cost study.
I just have a request for the building improvement grant but yet another revision. After reading the applications for the grant for the central business TIF, I realized that one corporation entity is applying multiple times. There is nothing in the program that says they can't, but basically they are going to use most of that budget line item money, that business, for several properties they own, and that, I think we need to look at limiting that to some
Yes.
degree for the future. Obviously, we can do nothing about what's going on now.
So that's actually part of the agenda on the 24th. We will discuss that. And one thing I will say, one thing to keep in mind with that, though, when you have, regardless of who it is, one parcel with multiple addresses, they're still only taxed on the parcel, not the addresses. So that's something to keep in mind, and that was also something that was addressed during the Tax Increment Fund Advisory Committee meeting, and they wanted to move forward with addressing that as a single applicant as opposed to 4 separate applications. So we'll cover all of that on the meeting on the 24th.
Okay, I just think it needs clarification in the
I
grant,
agree.
because I think it's not understandable for most people.
Yep, I agree.
Does anybody have anything else?
I do have one other question. When you mentioned district programs, whether the proposed grant programs and amounts of the board's priorities for FY27 and whether the balance forward is appropriate to any of them, do we have those?
Yes, we'll be able to cover that as well, because we have
Thank you.
to do a final review of the applications, and then you'll
Okay.
better understand what's left in
Thank
that
you.
budget line and how
Okay.
much needs to go
So,
to cover those.
So what my takeaway is, what the board is asked to decide, go ahead and do our homework, so at the next meeting, we can be effective and efficient.
I think that should always be our standard.
It'll be in your packet.
Well, I just wanted, what I want to make sure is on this page that there was not something which she needs to leave with. I'm sorry, before. Yes, I just want to make sure there's no action or being
No.
asked for tonight, but it's in preparation for the 24th.
Correct.
These are things, I just want to state that for the record. Everybody's nodding at me, but let the record show.
The deputy is next.
Madam
It
Chair,
was in there because it will affect the budget decisions.
just a clarification,
Talk to the mic.
I'm sorry, we will have now another budget meeting. Next week's meeting is our regular meeting, and then we'll have another budget meeting to work on the budget?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
I know we don't have it scheduled, but we'll need to have another one beyond Monday's meeting.
Is there anything else?
It's one thing, Madam Chair. I just wanted to just say thanks to CRA staff for the wonderful job you did, city staff for assisting in that process, city manager for helping to make this all clear for us, and also welcome Ms. Lasikia Hodges to the city with the work that she's providing for us illegal. And again, I want to commend and thank Ms. Jennifer Thompson for her new role in the city. I think that was worth saying.
Motion to adjourn.